Welcome back into the film room, guys. I'm your host, Eric Turner. Thanks again for joining us on this Tuesday. Trades Tuesday. That's the off season that we're going to use. That's the terms we're going to use for draft season and some of the prospects we're going to take a look at this off season leading into the draft. And I'm joined again in the film room by my man, Anthony Prohaska from Disguise Coverage. What is up, Anthony?
I'm still vibing from that intro music. I love the intro music touch, and I just want to keep riding out to it. But I'm good. I'm excited for Trades Tuesday, cleverly coined by yourself there. And man, off-season, draft season, how it ties into free agency, what we need. It's just so fun to be able to sit and discuss prospects and what they're good at, what they're not so good at, what their opportunities are, strengths, weaknesses, all that stuff, how they fit in with the Bills. And it's all really kicking off with this episode for us.
Yeah, Ron's already in the chat, ready to go. He's saying, can we find a way to draft all three of these players that we're doing film on tonight? So as Ron is alluding to, the three players we're going to take a look at, Anthony, why don't you let everyone know who we're taking a look at tonight?
We are taking a look at Koramoah from Notre Dame, who is arguably my favorite prospect. I feel like I'm probably going to change my thought every other day as we get closer to draft time. So it's kind of tough. We're also taking a look at Tyler Shelvin from LSU, Greg Thompson's favorite player in this draft.
He's a beast.
Will tell you. He is a monster.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at Najee Harris, running back from Alabama, who is on the minds of a lot of Bills fans and is someone that Aaron Quinn is keeping a close eye on, one of Aaron Quinn's favorites, another Cover One member, Aaron there. And so we're taking a look at some multiple defensive pieces. We're taking a look at a running back, but either way, all three players are someone that ticks certain boxes and areas of need for the Buffalo Bills and all represent a level of play and execution that the Bills need and will be looking for heading into the draft and heading into 2021.
Yeah, definitely. And just so you guys know, every week we're transitioning to draft season. So every week we're going to study a few players behind the scenes, and then we're going to try to bring two or three of them to you and just kind of highlight, mostly strengths, but we're going to have some of the weaknesses as well. You'll see some of the graphics and, some of the, the things and the cons of players and things to look for when you're watching film. So we'll bring a few prospects to you every week. And as Anthony said, we have a few of them teed up for tonight, but let's kick off with obviously some roll call. We always like the roll call where you guys are tuning in from, state, country, zip code, wherever you guys are tuning in from. But also, as Ron, threw a super sticker up there for us, we appreciate that, Ron. Super chats, as you guys know, there's a little donation button to the bottom. You throw a question in there with that donation. We'll answer those questions, whether it's about the Bills or the draft. We'll try to get to that before we kick off the film and get into the nitty gritty and the X's and O's. So if you have any questions about the Bills this offseason, salary cap numbers, you have a nerd here in Anthony Prohaska. Greg, I'm sure, is going to be tuning in for a little bit. We have our capologists, basically in-house capologists and salary cap gurus in-house right now. And if you missed out on their extravaganza, their marathon of an episode, it's evergreen content, and it's going to set you up for the entire offseason, as Anthony knows and is laughing about, because he somehow beat himself and me. Normally in the film room, we're like hour and a half, hour and 45-minute shows. Greg and him, they beat it. It was a marathon, and it's good content, though, guys. It's something to watch in spurts if you need to, right, Anthony?
Oh, yeah. We had a blast, Greg and I, and I'm truly very thankful and grateful for the support that I always get here as part of the team, but especially with that cap episode. I recognize that numbers aren't everyone's thing and the content may be a little dry for people. Yeah, Eric, you're one of them.
I'm not a numbers guy.
And when you add in the length of the episode, I was like, oh man, I guess we'll see what happens, but it's trending really well. And the feedback, it's the feedback really that we've gotten, the amount of people that have reached out via DM and just direct messaging on Twitter and adding us and just saying how much they appreciated it and how thankful they were and how much they loved it for all the different points of it. It was super rewarding, especially considering all the effort that went into it. I needed an IV after that episode. I was exhausted.
No, it was an awesome episode. And again, I'm not a numbers guy, but it was nice to hear, Bean's options for each individual player and how that may affect the total, roster construction. So it was an awesome episode. You guys, if after we're done here, go check it out because it's well worth it. And as Buff Wagon says here, hog mollies, hell yeah. Anthony and I, we broke down the run game a couple weeks ago and some of the issues there. And we've talked about in this film room, about some of the issues we saw on the defensive side and stopping the run. And, it is going to start up front. And no matter who they bring in the skill positions, whether it is Najee Harris, like we're going to break down tonight, or Etienne, who is obviously another big name that could be there at 30 late in the first round. It's going to really come down to what they have up front. And there are some, pieces that they're going to have to fill in probably with different assets and resources. Right, Anthony?
Oh, for sure. I think as we get closer to the start of free agency and the draft, there's a lot of areas of need, quote unquote, or areas where the Bills can upgrade. And I think some are sexier than others. I think it's, like a running back, or, you and I were talking offline and as our Twitter conversation earlier, like, a tight end like Jonnu Smith, or, oh man, but there are the non-sexy areas like the offensive line and even the defensive line to a degree. I know that's more on people's minds, especially after what happened in the Super Bowl, which we're going to talk about briefly. Yeah. But that offensive and defensive line, you hear the proverbial games are won and lost in the trenches. And we saw it in the Super Bowl, and we saw it in several areas for the Bills. If you can't generate pressure, or if you can't open up holes on offense, and if you can't pass protect, the Bills didn't have an issue with pass pro this past year. But we saw when we broke down the running game aspect, the Bills had to swap and go to an entirely different scheme in 2020 than they really ideally wanted to, because their guys up front couldn't execute what they were ideally trying to do. Yep. And it changed the way they operated for the majority of the year, especially the back half, and then going down the stretch into the playoffs.
No doubt about it, man. It's that is what I'm paying the most attention to. And it's why a lot of the prospects in the draft that I've watched have been up front, whether it's guard or tackle. And there's some good, good depth as far as those positions go in this draft. So it's not something you necessarily have to go early, but it's a position, and especially right tackle. If Williams does hit the market, right tackle, I don't want guys coming in and out. I don't want those value guys really anymore. You got Dawkins locked down. You have that money, allotted to him. Get yourself a starter, someone to lock in at right tackle for the next 5 years, if you get him in that first round, and get him on that controlled contract. And go from there. That's what I'd like to see them do. Obviously, I probably want to go for guard early on in the draft, but there are some decent ones that go into day two. So if they're going to go early offensive line, those hog mollies, as we're talking about from Buffwagon, I do think tackle is a good position to invest in that, just because again they extended Dawkins and we want to protect Josh Allen.
Yeah, for sure. That was, I think, an underrated aspect, maybe not underrated, but when you looked at the Bills' offensive line, I think the interior play, whether it was the Mitch Morse drama and storyline, or the guard play, whether it was Spain leaving, Cody Ford going down, all those types of things, I think lost in that was how much Darrell Williams and Deion Dawkins were pillars of strength for that offensive line. The most snaps on the offensive line, Darrell Williams saw the most for the entire Bills offensive line. Dawkins was there, as he always is, knock on wood. I'm very superstitious, but they anchored that offensive line and they played good, and they were a large part of the reason why Josh was able to stay clean and find success. And exactly to your point, the tackle position, again, emphasized by what happened in the Super Bowl recently.
Yeah.
Those aren't positions where you really want to be piecing things together or trying to like duct tape things. You want stability. You want to be solidified on those edges, because granted, pressure up the middle is a very hurtful thing, but you can do a little more things to kind of stem that tide up front. But if you're getting beat off the edge consistently and straight, it changes your pocket. It changes your drop. Especially from a peripheral standpoint, you feel like you're getting jittery. It's a massive mind messer for a quarterback, and we can't afford to have those kind of issues, especially with the talent and the weaponry that the Bills have. We need to be able to be solid up front and let Josh do his thing.
Yeah, it was a big narrative, a big storyline in the Super Bowl. So let's get into some of that. We'll get to a couple points from the Super Bowl, and then we're going to talk about some stats from ESPN and their win rate stats. We'll get to that afterwards. But it was a disappointing Super Bowl. I just want a good game. I didn't care who won. Yeah. I thought it was disappointing from that perspective that it wasn't closer than I had expected. So what did you learn from it, though? There's a lot of talk about how the Bucs won that game and winning in the trenches on both sides of the ball and being able to run the ball against the Chiefs, and how, the Bills need to start to model, because obviously the Bucs won. They got to model their roster and their philosophy after what the Bucs did. But what did you learn from that, and what can you take from that?
Ooh, my big takeaway from that game, there's a debate that consistently exists all the time
Every
when
day.
talking about defense. Every day you're talking about, do you prefer to have good coverage or do you prefer to have good pass rush? And we saw in that game, my big takeaway was just what a dominating pass rush can do. I think as much as people may dislike Patrick Mahomes or the Chiefs, he's the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Their offense is arguably the best offense in the NFL, and they just were unable to put together anything. And the numbers were staggering. Patrick Mahomes was pressured on 29 of his 56 dropbacks. That's the most in Super Bowl history.
It's crazy.
Versus Brady, who was pressured on only 4 of his 30 dropbacks, which is the lowest of his entire Super Bowl career. The Chiefs' offensive tackles allowed, just between the tackles themselves, allowed 18 pressures, which is the most in postseason history since 2010.
Wow.
Patrick Mahomes, distance traveled before pass attempts, basically how much time he had to scramble and run around.
Yeah.
468 yards traveled before pass attempts, which is roughly 8.4 per drop back. Tom Brady, 37 versus 468. We saw Mahomes, as soon as he snapped the ball, granted, you have to have the coverage aspect on the back end, because if guys are open right away, then you can snap, look, done. But he was not able to set his feet. He was scrambling nonstop. He looked like a chicken with his head cut off. They were hitting him consistently. They got physical with him, and they were just generating pressure off the edge on almost every single snap. And that game was a big one for the proponents of the pass rush is more important than coverage debate.
That was a big punch. That was a big punch for when it comes to that debate, right? It was pass rush heavy. But I will say, I'm not one versus the other. I'm more middle of the road when it comes to this, Anthony. You kind of have to have both. Yes, you got to have that, that front four at times that can affect the quarterback, get him off the spot. But you also need, when you play guys like Tom Brady, you need coverage to be tight. You need disguising to be really well, because you got to get him to hold on to the ball. The guy averages 2.14 seconds from snap to attempt. So in order to get him to hold on to the ball, to get pressure on him, you got to disguise. You got to have good coverage. You got to have tight coverage, and usually, man type coverage against him, so that, the pressure can get home. So I think they kind of play off each other. And when it comes down to NFL, like, you can't hang your hat on just one thing. Some weeks you're going to need coverage. Some weeks you're going to need the pass rush. Some weeks you're going to need a little bit of both, as we all know. So I thought, but for this game, it definitely was more pass rush oriented. I mean, they, rightfully so, given the injuries and the rotation of the Chiefs' offensive line. We kind of expected that to happen, but we didn't expect Mahomes to get, as rattled as he was in this game. That was one thing you never really seen from Mahomes.
Yeah, he looked. Oh, those couple of images that ESPN put up on Twitter, he looked like a deer in headlights. He was just sitting there wide-eyed, just staring off into the distance. He couldn't find open guys. When he did find open guys, Tampa Bay's defenders were stuck to him. The Buccaneers defenders played the ball better in the air than the Chiefs receivers and tight ends did, I guess, really, except for Travis Kelce, who found some space here and there. But even when you're looking at Mahomes' numbers, a lot of it was garbage time based. When the game actually mattered, he had nowhere to go. They got outgunned. The Buccaneers were just more physical. They were meaner. They were faster. I think that was it too. Granted, the offensive line played a large role in it, but that Tampa Bay defense, they looked faster than the Chiefs offense. And no one is faster than the Chiefs offense. So whether it was processing speed in their brain or the physical ability, they just looked like they were ready to go from the jump, and the Chiefs were stuck in neutral a little bit, combined with what the line was unable to do up front for Mahomes, combined with the tenacity that Tampa Bay showed. It looked like Kansas City got punched right in the face, especially coming out in that second half, and they were never able to recover.
Yeah, and you got to think about it. I mean, obviously Mahomes, he lives and thrives outside of structure, outside the pocket, and he didn't really excel in that area against the Bucs because of that speed. Even when he did break the pocket, there was someone on his tail, forcing him to get rid of the ball and throw into a tight window down the field. I mean, per Pro Football Focus, snap to attempt, 3.31 seconds for Mahomes. That is crazy. To sack, from snap to sack, 3.73 seconds. So
Oof.
he was holding onto the ball, running for his life at times, but they were able to, with the speed down the field, plaster down and make those throws into tight windows. And obviously a lot of them were contested, and they weren't just contested from defensive backs, man. The Devin Whites, the Levante Davids, like that's what Bean was talking about and McDermott was talking about in their end of the season pressers, is like having that type of speed makes a hell of a difference. And you saw that. I mean, not only did they, beat them up in the trenches, the speed at the second level really stood out on the Buccaneers defense.
Oh, for sure. And we saw the stat in the Super Bowl. Romo was highlighting it. I believe it was in the fourth quarter, the Buccaneers were in too high 82% of the time in that Super Bowl, something that the Bills did in the first matchup against the Chiefs. But the difference was the Buccaneers defense is faster as a whole. We talked about it in one of the film room episodes several weeks ago. Yeah. The Bills defense, they're good. They're technically sound. They're well coached. They execute well, but they are not a team of overly, other than really Tremaine Edmonds and Ed Oliver to a degree, they're not overly athletic. They're not tremendously fast. Tre'Davious White is a phenomenal corner, one of the best in the league, but he's not some guy with 98, 97 Madden speed. He's not Patrick Peterson in terms of his athleticism. He's got great footwork, hand technique, play recognition, mental ability, but the Bills defense isn't a defense of speed demons or athletic freaks.
Athletes.
And when you're trying to run with a team that's got horses like that and you need to man up with them in certain ways, both literally and figuratively, to shut them down, you need speed at all levels. We didn't have it. Tampa Bay did, combined with everything else that they did from a meanness standpoint. And they really just had an answer for almost everything Kansas City tried to do, which is something that's really tremendous because we talk about Tyreek Hill, but Mecole Hardman might be faster than Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Travis Kelce, one of the fastest tight ends in the league, locked up almost consistently. Watkins, as much as Bills fans still dislike him, Sammy can really go. Yep. Even Pringle runs like a sub 4.4. They got a bunch of dudes who can run for days on Kansas City, and they could not find room because of the coverage and then because of the speed and physical talent that Tampa Bay had.
Yeah, and the Bills obviously didn't have that when they faced the Chiefs, and that's why you heard the front office and coaching staff say, hey, we got to get more physical, we got to get faster. We need speed. And you kind of saw that in the scheme this year. The Bills, we talk about offensive line and defensive line winning games. The Bills blitzed more this year in 2020 than they had in 2019. And what's funny is that they still had the same pressure rate. So listen to these stats per Sports Info Solutions. So the Bills blitzed 31.3% of the time this year. That was the 8th highest in the league. And their pressure rate was 32.4%, tied for the 17th highest. So they blitzed a lot, and they were average, almost below average when it came to getting actual pressure. In 2019, they blitzed 25.8% of the time, which was the 16th highest. So from 2019 to 2020, they actually upped their blitz percentage. And their pressure rate in 2019 was 35.4%, again, 17th highest. So the Bills had to blitz more this year, and that is disappointing from a salary cap perspective, as we've talked before, because the Bills invested a lot in the D-line. And of course, there's context and nuance to that conversation. And, with COVID and all the new faces in the defensive line room, losing Milano a little bit, how they had to change the scheme to accommodate AJ Klein and blitz him more. So there were some things that, kind of tweaked those numbers, but it's disappointing to hear that you had the same pressure rate basically as 2019. Well, you had to blitz just under 6% more in 2020.
Yeah, to invest the amount of money that we did in the defensive line going into 2020, this is something that Greg and I talked about when we did the salary cap special. You need more on-field production to match that. And there you go, Randy said it, they're bad investments kind of. Yeah, when you're sinking that much money into an area, you need more on-field production to match the monetary value that you have sunk into that position. Again, going into 2021, Mario Addison has the 5th highest cap hit. Quentin Jefferson has the 8th highest cap hit on the Bills. Vernon Butler has the 10th highest cap hit on the Bills. You hear those numbers and you would think, okay, well then our front four has to be dominant with the amount of money that we're sinking into that position grouping. Mm-hmm. And you just didn't get it. And it's even more disappointing to hear how much we had to compensate for that, and then how it opened us up to other areas and made us vulnerable to certain positions like the tight end, which you and I spoke about offline. You had a great point with the fact that we had to come up more, we had to blitz more, we had to simulate those pressures or actually come on the blitz, and it left us vulnerable in the middle of the field where tight ends feasted on us for a majority of the year.
They did, and we're working on that project as we speak. We have Max compiling some statistics and advanced metrics to kind of show where where offenses were targeting tight ends on the field, what downs, what distances, what guys are in coverage, zone versus man. So we're getting into the nitty gritty of that just to get an idea of what changed from 2019, because 2019 and even 2018, the Bills weren't that bad against tight ends. They were only allowing, I think, 5.3 in 2019, 5.3 per reception per game to a tight end. And so and last year in 2020, it was like over 8. So, tight ends were tearing us up in 2020. And so that's an area we're going to study a little more and see how that's going to affect the draft. Maybe they do go to more of the Buffalo nickel role that everyone loves to talk about every year, but we never address it. Maybe this is the year. I hope it is, because I'm sick of talking about it. But it goes to show that, that's the type of self-scouting this team's going to do. And they have to figure out, okay, why are we getting torched by tight ends? Was it maybe just because they played some good tight ends? I mean, it could be anything. It could be the simplest answer, but we're analyzing that right now. So that'll be another episode down the line. So let's get into some more stats. I mentioned at the top about ESPN and their win rate stats, and I want everyone to take them with a grain of salt, because a lot of the stats when it comes to the pass block win rate, run block win rate, things like that on both sides of the ball is based on time. And it's usually based on that 2.5 seconds. How fast can Jerry Hughes affect the quarterback, get within a yard of the quarterback before he throws it to affect the quarterback. And that counts as a win for a pass rusher. And so you got to take it with a grain of salt, because obviously if a team is throwing play action in there, they're holding the ball longer than 2.5 seconds. So maybe the offensive lineman blocks longer than 2.5 seconds, and that formula is not adjusted to that. So let's take a look at this from an individual pass rusher perspective. And I bring this up because I think that, a lot of fans, let me get the defensive end pass one. There we go. Jerry Hughes, number 2. Okay. So highest pass rush win rate as an edge defender. A lot of people have been saying, hey, we got to cut Addison. We got to cut, ask for a restructure from Jerry Hughes and all of these different scenarios to kind of get some money so that we can have all the toys, obviously. But if you look at Jerry Hughes, man, I think this really puts it in perspective. Number 2 in win rate at 29%, tied with TJ Watt, basically atop the league. I mean, that is something that a lot of fans don't quite realize how disruptive Jerry Hughes is.
Oh, I would bet they don't. Not even Bills fans, just anyone. Take a poll of NFL fans and name the top 10 edge rushers in terms of pass rush win rate. Look at the names that Jerry Hughes is there with: TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Brian Burns, who's had a phenomenal start to his young career in Carolina, Joey Bosa, Justin Houston, Chase Young, JJ Watt, Landry, and Lawrence. Those are all perennial dudes. Maybe Harold Landry not so much in terms of name recognition.
He's explosive, though.
He is very explosive.
Think about the athletes too. Think about it from that perspective. Jerry Hughes is not seen as a super explosive guy anymore, but I mean, he's putting up numbers, being disruptive as much as some of the Chase Youngs and the Harold Landrys of the world. Very explosive athletes on the edge there.
For sure. And he's not somebody who's in his prime anymore, quote unquote. And he gets a lot of hate from Bills fans. I've seen a decent amount of people clamoring for, like you said, well, we should just restructure Jerry or get rid of Jerry. He's done. He was one of the best graded edge rushers throughout the year. And then we see more stats like this. The fact that he's tied with TJ Watt, somebody who was very, very, very much in the thick of the defensive player of the year conversation for what he was doing off the edge and how much of a terror that he was. Myles Garrett is a monster. Burns, Bosa, that top 5. Jerry Hughes is ahead of Garrett, Burns, and Bosa. And you see something like that, and I don't think people are aware of it, not especially in the NFL, but even Bills fans, with the amount of, I don't want to say hate, but with the amount of discontent they express towards the defensive line, and Jerry Hughes especially. But he had a tremendous year, and it's something that I don't think a lot of people know.
And here's another one. This is a guy that a lot of Bills fans are saying we should cut. Quentin Jefferson, he was my guy coming into the season and number one free agent target for me coming into the season because he was top 10 last year in this very same category. So he's a guy that, a lot of people thought he underperformed, but he also, again, nuance and context of the story was he played out of position more times than not, played a lot of nose tackle, a lot of shade nose tackle, which is not his position. In fact, he probably was supposed to be the backup to Oliver, more of a 3-tech, and then also used along the edge in specific pass rushing situations. So he's number 9 right here in pass rush win rate. And again, another guy that a lot of Bills fans really want to just cut so they can get some other toys in other areas of the team.
Yeah, I think people see that he has the 8th largest cap hit going into 2021 and then see that he's got a 1.5 million dead cap hit. And they're like, oh my God, we can save so much money. Let's cut him right now. He had a terrible year. But I like that he's in the top 10 with pass rush win rate as a defensive tackle. And exactly to your point, Quentin Jefferson and Ed Oliver, I think, are the 2 biggest amongst the defensive line in terms of guys who had to play out of position and wear multiple hats and hats that didn't suit them because of the absence of Star Lotulelei. And they found themselves in position, Oliver and Jefferson, they found themselves having to do certain things that they're not suited for and having to occupy blockers and line up in certain techniques and in certain shades that they're not necessarily built for or meant to line up in. And I understand the clamoring for cutting Quentin Jefferson because maybe he didn't make enough splash plays and didn't flash enough for you. But if you look at his positional versatility along that defensive front, especially in theory with Star coming back, where he's able to fill in, he allows you to do a lot of different things up front, and he allows for a lot of positional versatility in different packages and different subsets and looks. And it's nice to see him factor into the top 10 here again with a lot of strong names and guys who are perennial all pros and perennial Pro Bowlers, although I don't really value the Pro Bowl that much, but it's nice to see him get some credit like that. And I love that we go to the next graphic for our boy, Mitch Morse. We are staunch defenders of that, man.
Bring it. Mitch Morse is number 2 in the pass block win rate as a center. That's his strength. I mean, we know that, the Bills are a passing team, guys. And to have a center with this guy's versatility in the run game and getting out into space. And I know that's highly debated and his run blocking, but they obviously didn't use him properly. Everyone knows that. But when it comes to pass blocking, he's one of the best. And that's why that whole situation, mid-year, it didn't make sense to me. And it was all BS. I'll say it right now. It was all BS. They really wanted to see if Feliciano brought more as a center. That's exactly what it was. It wasn't to buy time for Mitch Morse and his concussions. No. And it was a mistake because in that game, Feliciano stunk as he did late in the year. And he gave up like 7 pressures or something in that, I think it was a Cardinals game. He was bad. And so Mitch Morse, people need to understand what he brings to a team. And this is it. It starts with his pass blocking. And that's what you need up front for Josh Allen.
Big time. We are a passing offense. We are a spread offense. Your center needs to be able to pass pro. You need your center to be able to communicate and be smart and be a heady player. And Mitch Morse checks all of those boxes. And as you and I diagrammed in addressing the Bills' glaring run issues in the film room last week, the things that he does well in the run game, like his pulling ability and like his folds and things that he does, especially in pin and pulls, what he does well in those gap scheme runs, the Bills didn't do a lot of gap scheme this past year because of the deficiencies along the rest of the offensive line. So you had a guy who isn't necessarily known for his run blocking, but I still think is good enough to get the job done. But then you put him in a running scheme, in a more zone-based scheme that is not fit for what he is ideally built for, and you're going to see some struggles. But I think despite all that, he's a really quality offensive lineman. I think you can see the difference when he's not in the game. And he's another person who he needs a little more respect put on his name, especially from Bills fans, because he does a lot. And stats like that you showed up front are beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously he's got to block for a guy that's not easy to block for. Look at Josh Allen snap to attempt, 2.87 seconds per Pro Football Focus in snap to attempt. I mean, he's blocking forever for this guy and 2 sacks, so that he's running around 4 seconds. Like, the fact that he's number 2 in his win rate and pass blocking win rate, it really bodes well for the offense because he's there. And that's why it didn't make sense to me. All that stuff that went on halfway through the year, like, your best chance of winning is with Mitch Morse at center in the run game and in the passing game. I don't care what anyone says. So do they want to maybe ask him to restructure? Go ahead. I would get that. I understand that. I think that's fair given his injury history. But you can't tell me that you're going to get more athletic like Bean wants to by subtracting Mitch Morse out of the equation. You're not. You're creating another hole on top of the holes at guard, in both guards, and at tackle. So it really irks me when Bills fans don't appreciate what Mitch Morse does outside of injury. Again, injury, that's fair. Concussions are a real thing. It's something that it's worrisome, but he wins where the Bills needed him to win, and that's in the passing game. And again, take these stats with a grain of salt, but from an individual standpoint, Anthony, I like these stats because they tell you, okay, I need this guy to block for more than 2.5 seconds because I have Josh Allen and he holds it for 2.87 to get rid of the ball. I need this guy. I need guys like that. That tells me that has value to me as a statistic. Now, when you get into like the team stats, like pass block win rate, or as a whole, like the team pass block win rate, the Bills were fourth in at 64%. Okay, that's directionally good. I mean, obviously the Bills improved when it came to pass blocking this year. They did a great job. It's part of the reason why Josh Allen and the weapons that they gave Josh Allen succeeded this year. But there's a little more noise in these type of stats when you take the whole offense because, again, play action alone will throw in a lot of muddiness into these stats because they're holding the ball longer than 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's a good metric as a team just to kind of put some more pieces together, but holistically, to your point, I like it much more on an individual basis because there's so much context in a team pass block win rate, both from the offense side and then from the pass rush win rate on the opposite side on the defense. I think there's just so many variables and so many things that are unaccounted for, like you mentioned, that you really need to add more context when you're looking at it holistically from a team perspective. I much prefer it from an individual standpoint, but at the very least, you're still able to color in a little bit and shade some things to be able to continue to put a holistic picture together, although this metric in and of itself doesn't holistically do that.
Then here's another one, the run block win rate. Okay, so you saw the Bills at fourth in pass blocking, guys. Now try to find them on this statistic. They're 29th in run block win rate. So again, hog mollies, get those guys some offensive linemen, get the Singletaries, the Mosses, the Josh Allens, some hog mollies up front, some more athletic guys up front so that they can run a more diverse run scheme, so that they can run into those 6-man boxes with ease. It starts up front, guys, and we saw that, to tie it all together, we saw that in the Super Bowl. You saw the Bucs dominate with their offensive line up front. Where they had young players, they had veterans, they had nasty guys, they had athletic guys. Like, they really dominated in the trenches, and I think that's why these stats and kind of tying it all together, why that is very important, and it's going to lead into the draft. It's something that the Bills have to improve on, and I think that's what Bean was expecting after Josh's third year, which is why he kind of structured those contracts the way he did.
Yeah, I think you can make the case for that, and it all connects back to that athleticism aspect, that speed aspect on the offensive line, on the defensive line, on both sides of the ball, really. Maybe not the offense so much, because I think if you're looking at our weaponry from like a peripheral perspective, I think at least in the wide receiver grouping and the tight ends with Dawson Knox, I think there's a good amount of speed and quickness there. But you're looking at this team holistically, the running back position, the offensive line, and the defense, you can add more speed, you can add more athleticism. And I think that's part of what we were going into tonight when we were breaking down the prospects that we're going into. All three guys have a physical trait or physical ability. Not that they're not good with technique or that their mental side isn't there. That's right. Far from the truth. But they all offer physical ability that is something that would really upgrade this Bills team. And we start with Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I will give anybody $1 to say that 10 times fast and not mess it up. You heard me say it in the lead-in, I just go with Koramoah because his name is so unique and I don't want to have to say the whole thing. But he's such a fun prospect to bring up in with what he's able to do. Yeah,
and our intern Nathan, he put together some notes on him, and we're reading them, offline before we went live, and I'm like, wow, this guy is very processy, right? So listen to this. In high school, Koramoah often asked his coaches to take him to church or the library on Friday nights after practice. That's a check. I mean, if he has like some kind of psalm or Christian quote in his Twitter profile, like that would lock it in as a draft pick for the Bills. But No, he had a lot of good things in his research about how athletic Koramoah is, and the graphic I put up here. Obviously a Dick Butkus Award winner last year. I said he's a hybrid. He's kind of that edge defender that Milano kind of played in Don Brown's system at Boston College. Albeit I do think Koramoah is a little lighter. I think he's more athletic, but he's not as much of a dog in the box, which we love, and how disruptive Milano is. And so he is a guy in that mold. I think overall he is more athletic and fluid in coverage than Milano was coming out and in the league. I think he's a guy that you could probably plug in right away to cover tight ends and cover even some slot receivers down the field, as we'll see in the film room. I like his speed and athleticism, obviously. And he's a chess piece because he's a guy that the Irish used, on blitzes, just like Milano. On blitzes, they mugged him in some gaps. Sometimes you even saw him in the A gaps and creating blitzing from off the edge in his slot position, blitzing from depth at the linebacker depth. He was a good chess piece for that Irish defense the last few years.
Oh, big time chess piece. I love the second strength that we have here up on the graphic, that hybrid slot defender, 88 snaps on the D-line, 215 in the box, 328 at the slot corner spot. He's able to line up and do a variety of things in a variety of looks. He's so athletic. He has so much fluidity. He was someone, I pegged him early in the year as someone I really liked for the Bills. And I saw him, not to make you laugh, but I saw him more in that Buffalo nickel role. And I see him as that. I like what he could potentially do in filling Milano's shoes if need be, but exactly like you said, I think he is stronger in the coverage aspect in terms of his ability to really stick to tight ends and wide receivers, the way he attacks the ball when it's in the air, and when guys make the catch in front of him, what he does coming forward. But because of his size, it will limit him in that box, and especially with that disruptor role that Milano plays that not a lot of people see, it's a wonder what he can do. Although this first clip that we're going to pull up is tremendously encouraging for what he can do, as we see him come up and attack the pulling guard and literally just out athletic him and use his athleticism to just juke him, shift inside, and make a play on Najee Harris.
Yeah, and that's the athleticism he brings. I think he's in the 215-pound range. Yep. So you don't want him taking on, these 350-pound guards pulling in Deontay Brown there. So linebackers are two different, molds. They either are the stack and shed guys, which are becoming a thing of the past, or there are guys like Milano or guys like, Koramoah that avoid blocks, that are able to elude blocks and then use their athleticism and bring running backs like Najee Harris down there. Really nice play there. This is one where you're going to see his athleticism not in the box, but down the field as well. Look at him get under the route to the bottom of the screen. You see the little play action fake from the pistol formation. Then he drops under to help his guy. So he's got, the corner obviously over the top, but he helps and gets in this passing lane right here. But just watch his athleticism. He's backpedaling. Look at him backpedal to get in that passing lane, force a difficult throw. So you see his athleticism inside and outside the box, right, Anthony?
Oh, for sure. He displays it everywhere he goes. The last video clip you just showed with that hip fluidity and able to shift gears. And in this one, we're going to see him drop back into coverage as the slot receivers running that post. Look at him run stride for stride with a slot wide receiver. How much would we have loved, again, we're going to keep using the Chiefs, how much would we have loved to see this against Mecole Hardman in the slot, or Tyreek Hill, or Travis Kelce? Look at him drop back, read what's going on. He turns and he runs, and he maintains depth and a proper angle so that if the quarterback goes for that throw, he's going to have to put air on it, and it gives him an opportunity to make a play on the ball in the air should the quarterback throw that ball.
Yeah, and you see that all the time from him. And, it's important because in that last play, the Irish were showing a too high safety look, but when you have a guy like this, that almost becomes a three deep look because he's able to carry those slot receivers. And you'll see it again here. And this is against Amari Rodgers, a very good slot receiver from Clemson. You see him get right into his hip pocket, get right in and collide with him right there, get in his pocket, and then just carry him down the field. He knows he has help from the safety, over the top there. And, the ball goes to Powell deep here, but this type of athleticism down the field and in the box is something that every defense wants.
Oh, for sure. That one against Rodgers is beautiful. Rodgers is tremendously fast, 4.4 speed, and I like how he makes contact with him. Yeah. And exactly like you said, stays in his hip pocket, rides him up the field. He doesn't get sloppy with his hands. He doesn't get sloppy with his footwork. He literally stays stuck to Rodgers and runs Rodgers' route with him all the way down the field and basically eliminates any option of Amari Rodgers getting that ball.
Yeah, and this is important to the Bills from a Bills perspective because McDermott always talks about defending the middle of the field and how when he was hired, that was one of the first things he said, we have to defend the middle of the field. And I think he was saying specifically against the Patriots because the Patriots and those, shifty receivers underneath from the slot were a team that attacked the middle of the field. And it's something, again, when you guys look at these numbers, and we were talking about the tight ends earlier, the Bills had struggles with tight ends and they had them in the middle of the field last year. So a guy like this that can not only cover tight ends, but get into receivers' hip pockets like this and into a trail technique. This is defensive back, a secondary type play here. You see the receiver get by him and everyone's probably saying, well, he just got beat here. No. This is getting into trail technique. Why? Because he knows he has help if this guy goes across the field right here. So he gets into a trail technique. Think about it. The quarterback is 20, 30 yards down the field. And, if this quarterback's going to throw it this way, that's a tight throw. And it's a throw that most quarterbacks aren't going to make. So that's good trail technique coverage from Koramoah on this play.
Tremendous trail technique coverage because it gives the quarterback no option. Yeah. Koramoah knows where his help is. So if the quarterback puts air on it, it's probably going to get picked by the corner on the other side of the field, defending the deep third. And if he tries to put it on a line, Koramoah is underneath. He trails and then cuts underneath to shrink that window down and take the angle away from the quarterback, almost like what a goalie does in hockey when someone's coming on a breakaway. You shrink that angle. Look at, he lets him go and then breaks on the route and starts to change his angle, goes a little more on a sharper angle to cut that, shrink that window, and now he's effectively bracketed that man with his coverage corner on the other side of the field, so there's nowhere to go. And again, you talked about it, what McDermott wants to take away. And what did we see the Bills get beat with? Routes over the middle, athletic, fast guys taking advantage of us. Koramoah is somebody who helps that. And this next clip is just, I love all these clips, but this next one is beautiful.
Yeah, it's something that pops on film. It's one of the traits that you see on film. Hey, he may, get beat sometimes over the middle, but you'll see him get into that trail technique and then just shut him down. I mean, that is, again, Amari Rodgers. This is a wide receiver, a true slot wide receiver that he's staying with in trail technique. Look at him just run. It's too easy. And then you see the long arms too. You see him, he's able to stay in phase with Rodgers there. Just good coverage across the middle of the field. And it's something that also shows up in his film is his collision point. You referenced it, how he's able to collide with the receiver, get into his pocket. And here he shuts down the tight end, Anthony, and that's where the ball wants to go from the quarterback over the middle of the field to that tight end. But he's physical with him. He doesn't get blown off the spot, and he just shuts him down, and the quarterback has to look elsewhere.
Again, what do the Chiefs like to do? Get Travis Kelce in those one-on-one matchups down low. The teams love to do it now, take advantage, and he doesn't get backed off. He makes contact at the collision point, stays with his man, stays over the top of him, and he stays over the top of his man while also keeping his eyes locked onto the quarterback. So if a throw is made, he can break on the ball immediately. He is step for step right from there. Good hand placement. His hips are open. He's reading the quarterback through his man, staying on top of him, ready to make a play should that ball go to the tight end.
Yeah, and the other trait that we're going to talk about with him is his ability to attack the ball. It's something that showed a lot in this Clemson game. So he'll he'll surrender reception here or there over the middle, but he doesn't quit. Watch him attack Rodgers here. So Rodgers gets a speed slant here, gets inside of Koramoah, and you see Koramoah, what he does, he kind of retreats just a little bit because he doesn't want to get beat by the speed. But watch him recover here at the catch point. He gets to Rodgers and then punches the ball out right there. Just a good job at the catch point.
Yeah, the odds of people, and especially defenders, getting beat, it's going to happen. But what do you do if you get beat? And this is a beautiful example. He gets beat because of that false step, and he comes up and he's violent at the point of attack. Look how he swings that right arm through like a hammer, gets his hand right on the ball, good hand-eye coordination, hand placement, and rips the ball right out from, again, a quality receiver on Clemson that he's matched up on. And okay, coverage wasn't perfect, gets beat inside, recovers, incompletion, beautiful play. And this next one is a house call, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, so he's blitzing off the edge. We said, you can blitz this guy off the edge when he's in the slot. You can blitz him when he's in the linebacker role in the box. Here, you're going to see Clemson pitch it out to Etienne, and look how quickly he changes his angle from, where he was blitzing, look at him flatten his angle right there, go to the ball. And I mean, he gets into the vision of Etienne there and he fumbles it and, picks it up and runs it in for 6 there. He takes it to the house, man. I love it. I love that play.
His gait barely, if at all, changes from the time that he takes off. He just rounds his cut out and then realizes where the ball is going and beelines it to Etienne. He doesn't have to chop his feet. Nope. He doesn't have to stutter. He uses his athleticism. And again, that hip fluidity, this time coming forward instead of in a back pedal, and just rounds it and explodes and beats his man to the point and gets rewarded with a touchdown.
Yeah, you're right, man. He does not break stride. He stays at full speed. And you have to do that against guys like Etienne there. Like, you have to shrink their space out of the field. You can't give them options to catch the ball and then bounce it back inside. You got to suffocate running backs like him. You got to get him down to the ground. You got to stop him before he gets going. And here it pays off, and he's able to get 6 on the play here. So just good stuff from him. And I think that, some of the traits that you guys saw, his athleticism, his ability to play the middle of the field, shut down tight ends, wide receivers, slot receivers in the middle of the field. I think that type of athleticism and play is exactly what they want, not just from, a guy that may or could fill in for a Milano, but a guy that could not just play in the box at times, but could also be, as you said, kind of like that Buffalo nickel, that bigger slot defender role. Like, he's a little more versatile than I would say Milano was coming out, and Milano was more disruptive. I would say he's more disruptive, and he has that. He's just a dog, man. I wouldn't say that Koramoah is a dog, especially in the box, but he's way more athletic than Milano was coming out.
Oh, I would completely agree. And when you add that to his wingspan and his arm length, which are also tremendous, and he's got that explosive ability, that athleticism, that quick twitch. What I think is encouraging with Koramoah, because again, he's not a perfect prospect. He's not without flaw. He will sometimes play it a little too fast and take some poor angles and overcommit a bit here and there. But he's got these raw tools, again, that we talk about with the Buffalo Bills. We want to see them get stronger or bigger or faster, more athletic. Koramoah presents himself as that athletic upgrade that is fast, that is explosive, and with the head that he has on his shoulders, as much as maybe it's corny or proverbial at this point, but the good head that he has on his shoulders, he is somebody that McDermott and co can coach up and nail down his technique and nail down that execution, even more so than what he's already got at Notre Dame. But he has those raw tools that you can continue to polish and that you can't teach. You can't teach wingspan and quick twitch and speed. Sometimes you either got it or you don't.
Yeah, and just to wrap up this segment on Koramoah, if you look at the snap count and snap alignment from Pro Football Focus here, the top graphic is Matt Milano's usage out of BC his last year, and the bottom usage is Koramoah. So you'll see that Milano was in the box a little more, and that makes sense. He was a little thicker, a prospect coming out, more of a true linebacker. In Don Brown's defense, and again played on the edge a little bit, but he was in the box a little more, and you see that Koramoah was obviously more of a slot corner and fringe box player when he in his last season at Notre Dame. So that just kind of gives you an idea in their usage, and I do think they're slightly different, but Koramoah, with his versatility and athleticism, I mean, teams are going to be frothing at a bit because he really can play different positions based on, if you want to add a little weight to him, you can throw him into a linebacker role. If you want to keep him, at that 215 range, which it's crazy to think that Darius Leonard played at 215 at middle linebacker, which that's a whole nother discussion. But I don't think Koramoah is that guy. So you can do some things with a guy with his athleticism. But let's shift gears here. Let's get some hog mollies in the film room now. Let's talk about one of our favorite prospects in this draft, and a guy that you could throw in there with, Star Latula, Harrison Phillips, and any of the other nose tackles in the Bills room. Tyler Shelvin from LSU, a guy that opted out last year, so keep that in mind. The film that we are going to be watching is primarily from 2019, but he's a guy that if you throw him in the middle of the defense in a rotational role, early down player, he's a guy that is going to make a lot of people better around him, especially when you talk about the run game, right, Anthony?
For sure. You let off with the biggest question mark, or I guess weakness, as we have it labeled here in the graphic. What does he look like now coming into 2021 after not seeing him for a full season? But what we're going to show on the tape, really his strengths and what you really like. My favorite thing from him is his ability to recognize the double teams and the combination blocks, and his ability to cause havoc up front and keep his linebackers clean. That is what you also mentioned now, and his ability to make others around him better. You need guys up front sometimes to just do the dirty work and take up blockers. Ray Lewis, for as great of a linebacker as he was a much different linebacker when he had Tony Siragusa and Sam Adams. And then all of a sudden his play fell off a little bit. And then all of a sudden it rose again towards the back end of his career. And it was, he's had this, revitalization, but he also got Haloti Ngata up front. Yep. To eat blockers and keep him clean. And I think that's a very intriguing thing. I like Shelvin's ability as well to penetrate and push the pocket and drive linemen into the quarterback, but his ability to stay strong at the point of attack and maintain low pad level and just eat up blockers. How beautiful would it be for a Buffalo defense to see a big man in the middle just eating up linemen and allowing Tremaine Edmunds to do what he does best, which is just be fast and athletic and run sideline to sideline or fill gaps and attack the running back and attack the ball because he's got a big guy up front that's doing the dirty work to allow him to be better.
Yeah, and I think his quickness, of course it was 2019, but I think his quickness will catch some offensive linemen, some centers off guard when it comes to the pass rush game. And at the very least, what is he going to do? He's still going to have to occupy. He's going to occupy two, even in a pass rush role on those early downs. Because again, I think he's going to be a two-down player, but he's still going to get the pass rushers alongside him one-on-ones just because of his size and natural strength to push the pocket. But I do think there will be times where he's going to affect the quarterback because of his quickness off the snap when he's going against, some of those lighter centers, those 290-pound centers, and they're manned up, where it's, 5-on-5, O-line and D-line going. He's a guy that will catch some people off guard there. And in the run game, he's not only going to keep people clean. Think about this. The Bills 4-3 over front. You have a shade nose tackle, say it's Shelvin in this play, and you have a 3-tech in Ed Oliver. Well, teams have started running power runs, so they get that combination block on Oliver to move him out of there, which Oliver does a good job at the point of attack. But, sometimes he will be moved. Well, having a guy like Shelvin to push the pocket, when that down block comes from that center, he's able to constrict the running lane. So when that power is supposed to go into that B gap right at Oliver as he gets, knocked out of there, Shelvin's constricting that lane and keeping his linebackers clean. So now Edmunds has a really small alley that he has to get through, and he can get through now cleanly, and he's making tackles in the hole. So I think he will add a lot of different things if his weight isn't up to 390. And I've seen footage of him working out at Exos, and he looks good. He's not 390 pounds. He's been working out, from what I've heard, since November, and 5 days a week. And obviously they control his nutrition and everything, but it's not the same as playing, an entire season. That's what worries us when it comes to that. And that's why we put it under weaknesses. And of course, with his size, you're not going to get all that much range from him. He's pretty much, a C-gap to C-gap player in between the tackles. But a lot of times he will occupy, he'll two-gap. He'll occupy two gaps. But sometimes he's so wide and that, the three offensive linemen have to converge on him to move him. He's almost occupying three gaps, as you'll see in the film room. So let's get into the film room and kind of break down some of those plays, because it's fun to watch, man. I love watching these kind of guys because it's like sumo wrestlers just going at it, man. So he's head up over the center here, and just watch him control the center from Georgia here. Again, 2019, he just does whatever he wants. I mean, look at the strength. It's just too easy. He just twerks his body just a little bit and just throws him and get over here. You're not going anywhere. Minimal gain on the play.
Super disrespectful to the center from Georgia. Drives him back about a yard or two off the snap. Good leverage, good explosion, good arm extension. And then he's, at this point, he has the center owned to the point that he's just reading the running back, gets his head in the right spot, and then just literally, exactly as you said, chucks him, is like, okay, I'm done with you. Let me go make a play on the running back. Just for him to win one-on-one like that is good. And especially in today's NFL where you see, like you mentioned, lighter centers, having a guy like that lined up directly over the center at times is going to be a problem if he's left one-on-one.
Yeah, so watch him again stack here and see this is him two gapping. And the other thing I want you to pay attention to is not just, his assignment and, two gapping or where his helmet placement, his hand placement is, but I want you to watch the linebackers that are playing behind him in Phillips and my boy Patrick Queen from last year, one of my draft crushes from 2019. But watch him again, he's two gapping here, he's playing in his gap right here. But then watch as that running back commits to his hole right there. Now I'm just going to disengage, shed that block, and go make the tackle. I mean, there's just numerous clips of this. I mean, we could have done a film room on plays just like this. It happened that often here. Okay, you're not two gapping. You want a one gapper. The Bills are a one gap team. They're a penetrating team. Well, you want him to be able to run read concepts, blocking concepts, and then execute exchanges. So he's in the A gap right here to the right side, but watch on the snap. He goes backside right there. Why do they do that? So you disrupt the zone blocking of Georgia here. You see everyone going this way. Well, if you have a guy going in the opposite direction, shooting the backside A gap, that frees up Patrick Queen to do what he does best, and that's leverage down the line of scrimmage. But he doesn't even have to. Why? Because Shelvin is there to make the tackle. Let him chase the running back down there, man.
He gets penetration right off the bat. And then I love this part. He basically just pinballs off the offensive lineman to chase down from the backside. And again, I love Shelvin, and I don't want to take away from him here, but Patrick Queen is who I'm watching. Look at him. He's clean. Yep. He's just scraping. He's scraping. And then by the time he has to be like, okay, I need to make a play, Shelvin's already taking care of it because of the pure disruption that he's done up front. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I said his quickness is going to catch people off guard. Look at Landon Dickerson on this play. He's to the turf immediately. Look at that quickness off the ball.
And I love Dickerson. He's my boy. And
we're going to break him down next week, I believe, right? We're going to break him down. All right, a little tease there. All right, so yeah, look at the quickness here. This is Dickerson again. He's a fringe first-round player. A lot of people have him as a first-round player. But look at the quickness off the ball, and then he just swallows Najee Harris up, who we're going to get to. I mean, this quickness, I think, can catch centers off guard regardless of their size or their speed.
Look at that jump that he does off the snap. Look at that jump and that lateral quickness to his left. He starts to go for the swim move, but he was so quick off the snap that he just kind of rips through Dickerson, who whiffs completely. Again, Dickerson is a stud from a person perspective and a player perspective. And Shelvin makes him look completely foolish. And even that, he gets off so fast that he just bumps into the right tackle on accident and gets through. And again, the havoc, you just highlighted it. Patrick Queen is able to come up and slide right through the opening that is there because there's havoc and chaos caused by Shelvin up front. And Queen is able to just come forward, slide through, and be in position to make a play.
Yeah, and here's one you see him ricochet off that block. So a lot of times you heard me talk about he's two gapping, but really he's three gapping here. So this is John Simpson. You guys remember John Simpson? He's a beast. He's a grown man. You see him try to get movement. So the center is going to get hand leverage here on this play. And now this offensive lineman, Simpson, is supposed to bang him or feed block him and get movement on Shelvin. Look at him just bounce off that and just watch his lower body and bounce back from that. So he bounces back into the gap. So now, okay, he's obviously in this gap, but look at Patrick Queen just sitting pretty, staying clean. Again, this is a lighter, a young linebacker, Patrick Queen, new to the position, basically played running back a lot, very light, undersized. Watch how clean he stays here. I mean, he obviously doesn't process it properly, but he's clean. If he and Chase on right here hold the edge, this play is shut down. But these gaps right here are shut down by Shelvin. And, of course, the backside defensive end here. But Etienne, he's special. He can play above the scheme. He's able to bounce it here. But just shows you how clean he can keep his linebackers, right?
I love how strong he is at the point of attack here. And look at when he gets hit by that guard, him just lean on that left leg and then crank right back into the gap. And nope. It's like he absorbed the second blocker and then redistributed the energy from the block and used it to crank back into the hole. And again, it's a shame that the edge isn't contained and Queen doesn't make that spill outside to make the tackle, but Shelvin did his job there as he does on this play as well.
Yeah, and this one's good. It plays to the point that I was talking about is constricting the lane for the running back. So you get, you got two pullers here. You got a backside guard, and then you have Kyle Pitts, the tight end right here in offline position. They're running a gap scheme, and you see the shade nose tackle Shelvin right here. Watch how he gets into that center. And again, you get the combination of a deuce block right here, and they're trying to move the second level. But look at how Shelvin just collapses the entry point where the running back wants to go. He just drives that center back there and helps, minimize that gain. It totally shuts down that play. And again, keeps guys clean that are scraping behind him, just totally shuts down the run there by the Florida running back. It's just such a nice play. And you see this all over his film.
It's beautiful. He comes off the ball so strong. Again, the leg drive. And I like that this center is trying to turn him and seal him so he can't make a play. And Shelvin gets on his inside shoulder. Look at that. You can just see the white glove of Shelvin on the shoulder pad. Just completely beautiful. Thank you for highlighting it. Just jacking up the center completely. Long arming him, pushing right through one arm, and a la a little bit of a AJ Epinesa technique that he likes to use there. Just one arms the hell out of him, drives him back, turns him, and exactly what you said, constricts that running lane, constricts the hole, makes it harder on the running back and easier on his defensive mates.
Yeah, here's another one. Again, now he's head up over the center. Now watch this closely. So on the ball, you're going to see the pullers coming from the backside here. He plays right into this guard right here. So you got to think about this. This guard is executing a down block. Watch how he gets into that guy. And I want you to pay attention to this left leg right here, this left foot, and how he just straight lifts him. Look at him totally miss his stride right there. Constricts the running lane. And obviously now everyone can get downhill. Look at this guy. Look at Phillips. I think there's a linebacker for the Browns now. Look how cleanly he's able to come down there and help at the point of attack. And the rest of the Tigers' pursuit of the ball, it just blows that guy up, forces that running back to bubble wide and bounce it out wide. And that's where the pursuit is able to bring the running back down.
Yeah, the running back is unable to get north and south. He has to bubble out, like you said, get a little more horizontal and round out his route in that play. And when you get caught going more sideline to sideline, that's tough. And there's just so much free flow from the LSU defense there. Shelvin basically creates a hole for his linebackers, completely I feel so bad for that guard. All I'm looking at is that inside foot. Yeah, exactly. Right there. Just get right here, lift it up, and he just gets carried.
Sliding, man. It's up off the ground.
He's got no leverage. He's got no sustainability in that block. And then look at when Shelvin was done there, just kind of like lets him go. And then he just like falls forward because he's like, all right, I'm done with you. Like,
I'm exhausted. And the lineman's like, I'm exhausted. Next play, please. Like, you just see this often. Here's another one where the Tigers are basically in a tight front. You got 4-eye techniques right here. And this is a college defensive scheme. But just look at Shelvin. Look at him keep Queen clean. I mean, Queen's just sliding through. He's sitting in the hole waiting for Najee Harris to make that decision. Now what? I'm going to have to bounce it back. But that's where you see Phillips come from out here. He has a speed and he has this gap because Shelvin is holding Dickerson off, and he's able to bring Harris down right near the line of scrimmage. And that's all because Shelvin keeps his linebackers clean.
We talked about team defense after the Bills win against the Colts and how they would need it against the Ravens. And you can't always guarantee that everyone else is going to do their part, but you need people that will consistently do their 1/11th. And this is another example of Shelvin doing his 1/11th here in just keeping, again, his linebackers free. I love that right there. Leave it frozen. Yep. Patrick Queen is just sitting there being like, all right, cool, Harris, are you going to go in this hole? Or are you going to try and bounce it outside? I'll just like watch you and not have to worry about anybody coming up front because I've got my dudes up front occupying the blockers. And that's something that the Bills didn't consistently see this year. Edmonds was having to fight through a lot of garbage. He was getting linemen who were getting on his shoulders, getting on his hands. He was having to fight through blocks. Shelvin's ability, again, to keep his linebackers clean and do his part to allow them to come up and clean up the trash is honestly a very, very special thing. And it's not just because we were looking for it all in 2020 for the Bills.
Yeah, you got to think about it. You know, if the Bills can acquire a guy like this that is in that 340-pound range, 330-pound range, he would immediately become the biggest guy, obviously, in the defensive line room. But, the Bills had defensive tackles that were, Ed Oliver probably plays in the 275 range, 280 range. Starr wasn't there. Vernon Butler played some nose tackle. He was probably the biggest guy, 330 or so, but he was more of a penetrator than an occupier. Harrison Phillips is in the 300, 305 range. And then Quentin Jefferson was a 285-pound, 290-pound range nose tackle for the Bills. So Edmonds saw a lot of trash in front of him, but when you have a guy like Shelvin, sometimes you don't even
Whoa.
need to worry about the linebackers behind him. He will just split combination blocks like this. I mean, think about this. This is man, his name escapes me. This is the guard that I believe plays for the Titans that got into some trouble this year, but a massive human being, and he just splits that block right there, forces the cutback by the running back, and then again everyone rallies to the ball. Like that type of power at the point of attack to shut down middle inside runs, like that is what the Bills need.
Oh, he stays again so strong at the point of attack, and the center is combo blocking and trying to get to Queen, which he does. But Shelvin has stayed so strong that as soon as the center leaves, he gets a free spot to the running back because he split that double team and stayed so strong with his leverage and his pad level off the snap. So as soon as the center leaves, Shelvin is through, or the center has to stay. The center has to stay on Shelvin, and then Queen is free. Again, someone doing their 111th, making, oh God, it's just, I could watch this one on loop. A lot of these I could watch on loop, but this one just forever, just to stay that strong and not get eaten up by the double team, like you mentioned, by huge men up front. And for him to just stay strong there and then fight through and then make a play on the ball. Oh,
yeah, it's some fun film, and we stayed with a few of the run stopping traits. We showed some of his quickness, but he's gonna make his hay as a run stopper, as a guy that keeps his linebackers clean. He's a guy that probably won't fill the stat box like a lot of Bills fans want, and we're upset about his contract and his lack of production in the stat box count. But he's a guy that he's gonna make everyone better, whether it's the run or passing game. He will make others better, especially Edmonds. You got to maximize his ability, his length, his athleticism, and one way to do that is to get him, as you said, a Haloti Ngata, a guy up front that can just eat up blocks and let him just play fast. Don't worry about processing. Shelvin, be the disruptor, occupy those blocks, give me a clear gap to shoot, and then Edmonds can shoot it. That's what the Bills need up front. From their nose tackle spot. And it's a position that, given Starr's issues and contract and opting out last year, kind of an unknown. And we talked about the other defensive tackles and how light they are. It's a position that has some money invested in it because of Starr, and there aren't many options or resources to really fill that role, right, Anthony? Like, they're going to have to get creative when it comes to getting an occupier like Shelvin.
For sure. The free agent market isn't tremendously stout when it comes to one techs like that. You're really looking at Tomlinson from the Giants, who I know a lot of Bills fans are familiar with and wanting him at the trade deadline. But other than that, you're really kind of looking at some PC guys brought in on lower term contracts trying to fill that role. And it's either that or the draft, because as you mentioned, on the roster right now, we don't have someone that can fill those shoes. Ed is not built to fill that. Butler is more penetrator than he is just gap stuffer, holder. Jefferson, not built for that life. Zimmer is undersized. As much as I love him and as much of a dog as he is, he's undersized. And then Phillips plays that role to a decent degree, but not to the level that you need to keep Tremaine Edmonds clean all the time. And that's a great comment there from Trill. He can make you all better. For example, look at Vita Vea. He makes Devin White and Levante's job easier. That was a huge point for me for the Buccaneers that I don't think a lot of people talk about. When Vita Vea came back from his injury in the playoffs, that was a huge boost. Again, a dude who he can get some penetration as well, but his main job is like, hey, just be strong at the point of attack and keep our athletes free to make plays. And he did that over and over again. And to have somebody like that with this Bills defense, oof, beautiful.
Right. And so let's switch gears here. Let's talk some running backs. Let's talk Najee Harris, some of the strengths and weaknesses of his. So obviously he's actually a guy that we initially wanted to start this entire series with weeks ago. And so, I cut up a bunch of film. We never got to it, but eventually you saw a bunch of the clips that, we rounded up. So what were your takes on Harris and maybe his fit, and what surprised you about Harris? Because I know there's a few things that we can agree on that surprised us about his film.
For sure. And the initial thing I noticed was his lateral explosion and agility. He makes some jump cuts and some side cuts that are just, and it's understandable when you look at him. His thighs are massive. They're like the size of my torso. And he makes some jump cuts where he can just get about like 2 yards off a single cut, just lateral explosion and burst. And add that with the overall type of runner that he is, which is physical. He's strong at the point of contact. He is your proverbial guy who always seems to fall forward. He fights for extra contact. It's hard to take him down with just 1 or 2 guys. I would like to see him be more consistent in his ability to make dudes miss in the open field. He'll have some real nice ones, and then he'll get brought down by a guy that you really thought that he should have beat. Right. I also think, despite his size at 6'2", 230 roughly, he tends to bounce some runs more outside instead of staying north and south and staying inside where he can get more yards. But he's a really quality prospect, really quality back. All 3 downs he can play. And that was my biggest takeaway. His, and I believe it was yours as well, his ability in the receiving game, to his route running, his hands, his athleticism in the pass catching game. That really intrigued me for his ability as a 3-down running back in the NFL.
Yeah, that was my biggest surprise with him. His soft hands, his ability to look the ball in. He's a threat in the screen game, off play action, check releases. Like, he's just an extension, an outlet for his quarterback. He had 43 receptions, which was second behind Etienne. And the other thing that really stood out for me was his ability to make guys miss. Usually that first guy, he can make miss. He had 22 avoided tackles in the passing game. So he's making that first guy miss, and he's helping his quarterback and his offense continue and extend drives. I thought that was that's what really stood out for me. And of course, his length, his size, his catch radius, and ability to high point was something that we've seen on film in big games, whether it's broadcast or coaches film. That's something that stood out. Some of the other notes I had was elite leg drive, his hip, leg, and core strength help him on those jump cuts that you talked about, those explosive cuts when he wants to be sudden and or bounce it out wide. He's going to step through arm tackles. Arm tackles don't affect that balance. That is something that obviously really stood out. I do think he has a closer type role and mentality where, maybe he's not always as physical as you want him to be, but as we'll see in some of the stats, I think he has an ability to close out some games, and he's just aggressive. Like, his cuts just are mean looking. They're aggressive. And especially on those outside zone runs where normally you got one cut and go, like, he is very aggressive on those cuts. And I thought he showed a good amount of patience in those zone runs. I think he generally is better in zone versus gap schemes, those power schemes. I like him in zone runs better just because it meshes well with that burst and that cutback ability. And I think his vision's better on those as well. So the overall game for him and worry that I have is, in his pass blocking. I think he's okay. He's a good pass blocker. He's not going to be a liability per se. I think he can be a 3-down back, but there's some plays where I'd like to see him be a little more physical and not catch the pass rusher. I wanted to see him attack the line of scrimmage, attack that pass rusher, and assert his physicality and strength and size. That's something that I thought that was, that kind of stood out to me. And I talked about his vision and patience in zone. In gap scheme, I thought he was his vision wasn't as good. Sometimes he runs up the back of the pullers or gets caught in traffic sometimes where I think that he could be just hitting the hole a little bit more. So let's take a look at some quick stats that Max brought up for us. Let's look at tough yardage. So here's Harris getting the tough yards. So this is compared to all running backs with at least 100 carries. And if you look at broken tackle percentage, 29.1%, first down percentage on 3rd and 4th and 1 and 2. So 3rd and 4th, short yardage situations, he's getting a first down 89.5% of the time, as opposed to the average of 73.7. And then touchdown percentage from inside the 5, the low red zone ability to, convert those runs into touchdowns, 59.3%. A lot of his touchdowns were from that area. So besides some of those stats, is there anything else that really stood out to you from Harris that we should be covering? Even some of the weaknesses. Is there anything that we didn't really cover here, Anthony?
No, I think we pretty much hit all of it. My big ones, you nailed it with the run scheme aspect. I think he fits more of a zone-based scheme than he does gap. You can
now
see
relate
him,
that to the Bills. Now relate that to the Bills and what we talked about. Are the Bills going to be a zone team?
And that's it. Like, what are the Bills going to be in 2021? We saw that in 2019. They had a pretty decent split. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go back and no, I don't remember where it is. Oh, I do have it. In 2019, the Bills ran zone 110 times and gap 156 versus 2020. they ran zone 181 and gap only 62. So they were more of a gap scheme run team in 2019, but they were still decently close. And then in 2020, this past year, we saw them not be able to execute gap, and they just went full tilt into zone. And so that's a big question, especially when you piece together some of the things that being said and wanting the offensive line to be more athletic. Do they try to get back to their gap roots? Do they stay more in zone? And if you're looking at somebody like Najee Harris, who succeeds more in zone than he does in gap, then you start to think, okay, like, how does he fit into the direction this offense is trying to go in when it comes to how they're going to run the ball going forward?
Right, and I have some of his stats just in gap scheme because it's something. Again, it's. I think the Bills ran 60 or 62 gap runs last year, which is incredibly low, right? So 62. Yeah, 62. So 92 attempts were in gap scheme, 559 yards, 8 touchdowns, 6.1 yards per attempt out of 252 total rushes. So you can see they didn't run as much gap as, maybe when Brian Daboll was there. I think he's more of a zone runner. Not that he can't succeed in gap schemes. I just think he's more of a zone runner. Most of his explosive runs were outside. In fact, 22 of his 47 explosive runs were outside, and that was top 2 in explosive numbers outside. So that burst and that explosion that we're going to see on film is really what helps him get out there. And there are times where he relies on too much, right? He's more of a, when we talk about running backs, are they guys that rely on vision, or they rely on more of their athletic traits? And I think he's more of a reactive runner, where he's relying on his physical abilities, right, to create some of those big runs. And let's take a look at some of the film here. And here's a play, again, vision and burst on this play versus Auburn. Watch the cut here. Watch him set up this cut in this lane. Here's Dickerson feeding that defensive lineman to the guard. And you can see him pull right there, scoop to the second level. But Harris has to get, be patient there and then get that guy to the next level. And then look, now these 3 guys are covered up. Now you see him bounce it right here. Patient, burst. That's 6 points on the board. That's what you want to see from Najee Harris.
Yeah, I love this run so much because once the hole is there, he's patient. There it is. Bang. And it's gone. One cut. He's north and south. To a degree, more like northeast, I guess, and makes that cut, and he sees daylight, and he's gone. That explosion, that burst, it's exemplified in his power and at the point of contact, but it's also exemplified in his cuts and how he just gets after it as soon as he makes the cut. And it's a nice thing to see with given what we have now in the Buffalo Bills backfield.
Yeah, and you mentioned his lateral burst and his ability to make guys miss. Watch the run through by number 17 here, and you'll see him just, again, make that guy miss in the hole. And that's, as a running backs coach, as a former running back, those are the type of the plays that you get good grades on because you're making a guy miss in the hole. You're playing above the scheme. You see a guy miss the run through, and the guard, number 55, missed that run through, and Harris is able to cut laterally to make that guy miss and get a positive play out of one that probably should have been stopped for a loss.
The linebacker is a good angle. He gets in fast. He gets almost immediate penetration. And for all intents and purposes, Najee should be dead to rights here. And he just, again, that lateral agility and that burst, he just shakes him. And then, to your point earlier, all the linebacker can do is get arms on him. And an arm tackle is not bringing down this beast of a man coming out of the backfield.
God, that footwork. Watch him. Okay, so he cuts right here off his left. He's going this direction. But then watch him glide right here. Boom, his right foot hits. And then he excels over the top of the legs of the offensive lineman right there. And it's so sudden. It is so sudden.
Reestablishes that gait as soon as he finishes the cut and reestablishes his feet on the ground. He reestablishes that gait, and then bang, it's right off again. And he picks up where he left off.
Yeah, and then just watch his helmet, watch his eyes. So right there, he's looking out here, probably the number 27. But watch as he's, again, transitioning right there at the line of scrimmage. Look at him take a quick peek inside right here. Okay, this guy's right there. So I got to prepare for contact and try to spin outside there. Like, that is exactly what you want from a running back. Play above the scheme, make some plays outside of structure here. Here's another play where you'll see the burst and his agility away from an Ohio State defense right here as he catches the ball. Watch. Okay, so he's an outlet right here. Now just look at him just accelerate and make guys miss. Watch the angles that these guys have. Okay, he's got the ball. He's assessing where he's going to go here. He's got this guy coming. He's got a linebacker coming. Watch him change the angles and accelerate past this guy. So he changes the angle right there, accelerates inside. So now, he's going this way. He's in chase mode this way. well, guess what? I'm not going that way. I'm going to get back inside and break that tackle. Like, look at that elusiveness in the open field. That's what you want on these short outlet passes from your quarterback and running back.
As soon as he catches the ball, he's already setting up the outside corner for what he wants to do. You can see him catch it, and as soon as he catches it, he plants because he knows that's the point of the catch right there. He wants to get back inside and start setting up that move. So he goes inside, realizes exactly what he has, and this is my favorite part right there. He already has the outside corner beat because of the angle he took initially, and he changed the angle of the defender, and then he cut so hard off of that right leg, and again, it's that burst. It's that explosion. It's that power in and out of his cuts. You put a great word to it. And that's a mean cut. That is a strong, nasty cut. He splits the defenders, gets through them both, and then again, arm tackles, break through. I believe this was also a third down, and he converted the first. You can see the Bama sideline is pumped for the play. And again, it's Jay. You see him clapping it up there. It's just he should again. Kind of should have been dead to rights. He was surrounded by a lot of guys, no blockers really in front of him, and he just makes guys miss and gets it on his own.
Yeah, here's his receiving ability on a Texas or angle route out of the backfield, matched up with the linebacker, hard, aggressive cut back inside, catches it, and then puts 6 on the board. Makes it look really easy. Again, a guy at this size to put that move and create separation on this angle route with the middle of the field wide open because you have the defenders playing deep. Like, this is what you want for your quarterback. Make these easy throws and let horses like Harris create 6 points off a short reception.
Alvin Kamara makes a living off of this route and beating linebackers on this play. But the only difference is Alvin Kamara is not 6'2", 230 pounds. Yeah. And even on this play here, the throw is slightly behind Harris. He has to kind of gather himself and reach back, but he's athletic enough to make that catch and have it not affect his gait, and he gets back north and south. And again, he's got the defender on his back, and he's got 2 defenders coming down on him from the end zone. So he's really on a 3-on-1. There's not a lot of places to go. He gets grabbed from the defender chasing him from behind and is aware enough to then turn that into a spin move to spin away from the safety to the right and then spin out of the tackle attempt by the safety on the left, come out of it, maintain balance and core strength, and then come out of the spin and dive forward across the end zone. Beautiful. That's route running. That's athleticism. That's strength. That's power. That's balance. That's awareness. That's finishing all on one play. It's beautiful.
Complete. It's a complete play for sure. Yeah. It's a complete play from top to bottom. Here he is running just a little flat route, a little diagonal from the backfield. Watches, again, his elusiveness. He gets out there real quick. That speed out there out leverages this corner who obviously has that area. And then just watch the angle. He just spins back inside. So this is the type of play speed that he plays with. He adjusts to the throw. It's high. Now he's got to realize, okay, what angle is this guy coming from? He's processing that. And then look, the spin, the throw by. And then, again, he gets into the end zone. That's what surprised us on film, man. His ability to catch the ball and create yardage after the catch, not just high pointing, but catching and adjusting to the ball. And then, again, putting points on the board in the passing game.
That catch there, what I really like about it, other than just making the defender look silly, look at how tight and compact his spin is. There's no wasted movement. There's no wasted motion. He almost like spins completely on a dime. His footwork stays tight and balanced, and he comes right out of that spin and again gets right back upfield. But the awareness to just catch it, feel the defender, see the defender, stop on a dime, spin on a dime. The defender barely makes contact with him at all, which is ridiculous, seeing as how the defender had this play eyed up the whole time. Barely makes contact, comes out of that tight spin nice and clean, and then the defender can just kind of get a shoulder on him, but it's not going to matter. Even that, the way he just shakes off that defender as he goes into the end zone, like, okay, I'm going to score, like, you can bounce off me.
Yeah, he made it look really easy. And here he is, split out wide, empty set. This is what the Bills call, a Haas concept. You have a slot seam, and then you have usually a stop route or a hitch route from the number one receiver up top there, Harris. But you'll see the Gators are playing a little pattern matching coverage. So as the stop route kind of develops right here. You see the corner pointing to him. He's letting this guy know that he needs to get out there in this quarters coverage type look. So now that linebacker is becoming the flats defender responsible for Harris. He knows that. And, he understands the coverage that this is quarters coverage. So these guys are going to be pulled over the top by this slot receiver. So what's he do? He immediately diagnoses that, okay, middle of the field's open. Quarterback can't throw the seam route. I need to get to some open space, some open real estate. He does, and becomes QB friendly, and then again converts it into 6 points. I mean, this is just awesome processing on top of the receiving abilities from Najee Harris on this play.
That's exactly what it is. The fact that he's lined up out wide, and then the fact that he reads the coverage, and you have it right there. He finds the immediate soft spot in the zone because he knows the inside defender is coming outside to cover him. So he leverages the angle that he has, knowing that his inside man is going to be covered over the top and underneath, makes eye contact with his quarterback, finds the soft spot in the zone, makes himself available. Like you said, it gets QB friendly. And again, he has to stop a little bit for this throw, shakes off a defender, bursts through the end zone, carries a man in. To see that level of mental processing and that level of mental sophistication from a running back in the passing game lined up out wide, in addition to the physical athleticism, is extremely encouraging for his prospects at the NFL level.
Yeah, it's again, this is what stood out to us, his receiving ability, his processing. This is one that he did this several times, again, in big games where he just gets high points, the ball. So a mesh concept, this is a concept the Bills run. We've broken this down several times in the film room, Nate Geary and I. So you're going to see Harris in the backfield and just wheel up the sideline there. And he's one-on-one with the linebacker there. Stupid. And you just see him go up and get it. Just think about the length and the athleticism and the size of Harris on these plays. And if he gets matched up versus linebackers like he does here, he's like a big-bodied receiver, right? I mean, he's able to high point at a ridiculous rate and consistently wins these type of 50-50 type balls.
I don't like to make comps, but this is like a Michael Thomas back shoulder throw, almost running kind of like that little cowboy route where the running back or the receiver is even with the defensive back and the quarterback's going to make that back shoulder throw. But this is a running back making a wide receiver like adjustment in terms of high pointing the football, adjusting his body in midair, shielding the defender. Yeah. And then coming down with the ball. Again, that's a wide receiver level play. That is wide receiver caliber. That is something we see from NFL wide receivers, NFL adjustments. And this is a college running back coming out of the backfield and making a receiver level adjustment on the ball. Just, again, that athleticism to high point the football. You would see so many running backs, and we do see it with so many running backs, who would let that ball try to come to them over the defender and try and make an over-the-shoulder catch. But instead, he fights for this ball, high points it, does it exactly how you are taught to do it, and comes down with the catch. And again, for a 6'2", 230-pound running back, that's pretty special.
Yeah, he that is going to get you drafted quite early. I know there's a lot of talk, and I think, was it Kaiir that mocked him to the Bills?
Yes,
at 30. I know there's a lot of people saying that the Bills are in the market for a running back high. I mean, who knows? It's early in the draft season, but I mean, there are a lot of traits that we broke down that the Bills could use, especially when you talk about the receiving element, because as much as I like Devin Singletary and he can run some really nice, option type routes and changing direction, he doesn't have that type of game breaking ability running routes down the field or over the middle. And the ability to not only catch it and be a receiver type, with that big body like Harris can, but break tackles and be that outlet. And Moss, the same as Moss, I think Harris brings a different element. And that's what excited me about watching this film. I mean, all the other running back stuff we can look at for all the running backs when you're talking traits, but that receiving ability is going to get him drafted early.
Yeah, he brings if you're just looking at him in a vacuum, that receiving ability combined with the physicality and the explosion and the size and the athleticism is what is going to get him noticed. It's what flashes on tape. It's what makes him a first-round caliber prospect. And putting him into perspective with the Bills, you nailed it right on the head. Singletary and Moss, although they are different, they're very similar in terms of their stature and their size and some of their skill sets. Although, again, Moss is more physical, and I think his receiving ability is underrated. Neither of them have the physical ability that Harris has. He adds a different dynamic. He adds a different element. And you and I talked about it when we were going over the glaring run issues in the film room last week. We talked about getting another running back for the Bills that can create mismatches. And it doesn't have to be a horse. It can be somebody like Danny Woodhead or James White, somebody with the ability to win out of the backfield and who can create mismatches on linebackers coming out, running a variety of routes, winning you easy matchups. Najee Harris can do those things, but from a much larger stature and from a 3-down perspective. So to have a guy who can tote the rock on 1st and 2nd down and then also be in the backfield on 3rd down and run some quality routes, I completely agree with you on the pass blocking. I would like to see him be as aggressive and physical in his pass pro as he is when running the ball. I think that's something that needs to be coached up. But to have a 3-down running back who offers you a variety of weaponry options for him, it's extremely intriguing to any team, but especially for the Bills, who could use a bit of an upgrade at that position.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of talk of if those top running backs are even going to be there at 30. I mean, if one of them aren't there, that's a good thing. I mean, we're not even advocating taking a running back early. We're breaking down guys who we think, could fit in. This is draft season, so we're going to look at everyone just like the teams are looking at these guys. Because if two running backs are taken, if the top 2 running backs are taken before the Bills pick, that means some good players are going to be dropping that have obviously, more value from a positional standpoint. And we're not advocating that the Bills draft this guy. I think if we're going to advocate out of these 3, Harris would probably the least of the 2 that we probably want to draft. I think Shelvin is a guy, again, if his weight and his discipline aren't an issue, he's a guy in the mid rounds that you could probably get second day or so. And then Koramoah, he's probably going to go earlier than any of the running backs. So I think he can obviously transition pretty well into the Bills defense. So we're not saying take Harris. We're saying that, this is draft season. We're going to take a look at some of these prospects that are linked to the Bills and tell you whether we think they fit, what traits and why they fit, and break these things down every week. And we're going to pick, different prospects every week. I asked right now in the chat room, who do you guys want broken down over the next week or so? Because we have a couple guys lined up, but if news changes, if, things happen with the Bills, or cuts are made, like all that could change. So be sure to leave comments in the comment section of guys you want us to break down every week, because this is basically what we're going to do up until like right around the free agent period. And once the Bills start, signing some guys, then we can do some breakdowns on those guys. But make sure you guys leave us some comments on who you want breaking down in the coming weeks. So, Anthony, let everyone know where they can find you on social media and when to look out for your next episode.
Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2 ANT. Give me a follow on Twitter, or Bags of Adamantium, or Gold, or just Cash, any type of fun thing. Blood Oaths, I'm a big fan of that, of your like undying allegiance and fidelity. And yeah, you'll find me on Twitter there. And again, as Erik mentioned in the lead-in, I am the host of Disguise Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network. You can find Disguise Coverage live every Thursday night streaming, and you can find that on YouTube, Facebook. You can find it also on podcasting platforms as well: Apple, Spotify, Google, pretty much anywhere and everywhere you find podcasting content, you will find Disguise Coverage. Please rate and review and subscribe and all that stuff. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for joining me in the film room, Anthony, man. It was fun. I like this format of breaking down a couple of traits. I know that it ends up being like 10, clips, 10 film clips for each prospect here, but it's fun. It's draft season. We hope you guys enjoyed that. We're going to be doing this a lot more. I am Erik Turner. That's Anthony Prohaska of Disguise Coverage. We will see you next week.